HR Famous is brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today. HR Famous is also brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies, named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider. Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com.
HR Famous, what's up? It's Jessica Lee, and I'm here with my friend Tim Sackett. Our other friend, Kristen's not here today, but you know, this is what happens when summer starts coming around. We're not all together. People are on holiday, taking vacation, although that's not the case for him.
Well, like we said this last week, right? We were like, hey, Jay's not here, so she's on vacation. And then we realized like it's been a long time since one of us has not been on the show. Probably because of the pandemic, right? We just, no one was really taking like big vacations except me. And then I forced you guys to like record ahead of time so I wouldn't miss, because I had like FOMO or something. So,
well, you could call it FOMO, or you could call it being proactive and planning ahead, which looks like you're the only one doing that. But do you know what I was doing when I was gone, absent from the podcast? We didn't really talk about where I went. I went and stayed in it's literally a tiny house, the smallest house I've ever had. There was no Wi-Fi. I had to sleep in a bunk bed. And let me tell you, I'm never doing that again.
I saw the picture. So I thought, oh, glamping. And it looked really cool, but it was too small, too close to everybody.
No, you know what? There's a reason why I like the hotel business and hotels and luxury services and amenities, like room service. Like we were like on top of each other because it rained at some point, so we had to stay inside. But I will say, not having Wi-Fi, I only had one bar of cell service, but I still managed to get on a Zoom call. Like I had to get on like a few calls, and like you can do it on one bar of service. Work from anywhere. This is the new world of work.
So it starts raining and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm stuck with my entire family in a one-car garage, basically, right? That's the size of this place.
Yes. One-car garage that had a toilet and a shower. And so it was fascinating. And the other thing is this place had rules. They wanted to like you to respect nature and other people's stays. So like when you're outside of your tiny house at the campfire, they want you like speaking in like low voices. Hush tones, which I'm like, with children, I don't know how you really do
Hey, children, let's roast a marshmallow.
Oh, you know what we did roast though? Jiffy Pop. That was my first time and it was so cool. Who knew?
I haven't done Jiffy Pop since I was like a kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
All I remember about Jiffy Pot is like my mom or my dad, whoever was cooking it, like on the stove. It seemed like they always burned the crap out of it.
There's a technique. You got to shake it. You got to stir it. Certain level of like distance from the heat.
Yeah. There you go.
Speaking of parents though, Tim, there's this interesting thing that's floating out there that we're going to talk about today. So we're both parents. We're both, we both have spent plenty of time recruiting and hiring and looking at, how many resumes do you think you've looked at in your lifetime?
Oh gosh.
Have you ever estimated?
100,000 maybe? I don't know.
We should actually do like a guess of how many resumes, how many interviews, how many job offers have you made in your lifetime? It's fascinating to think back.
How many offers?
Oh, how many offers, how many declines? We should actually tally it up. But if you think about all the resumes that you've seen in your lifetime, one thing that's coming up now as a new concept, have you ever seen someone put on their resume motherhood or fatherhood as a job that they've held? So there's this new thing that's coming out of motherhood on the resume.
I actually have a couple of times. Because I've hired a couple of like return to work, like moms that were away for like an extended period, like 5, 6, 7 years. And they, on their LinkedIn profile, actually had put like, domestic engineer. They made up some funny title, right? That they were taking care of their family or raising their family, but it's pretty rare. Like, I mean, I think I can think of only 2 instances I've ever seen that in my entire career.
Yeah, I like those clever titles like chief household officer or things like that.
Yeah.
But so there's this thing out there called the MOTR. It's the Motherhood on the Resume movement. And I'll read you a line of what they're trying to do. So it's a movement to validate the unpaid labor of moms, destigmatize taking time off from work for motherhood, and recognize the strengths moms bring to their professional lives, not in spite of being parents, but because of it. So it's this movement that started during the month of May to add mother to your resume. And there's a whole organization that's like giving mothers like tools that they need to translate what it means being a mother, what that means for the professional world. And then how do you like talk about it in the workplace? And I think this is fascinating. So, like right now, their goal is just to get 1,000 women to add motherhood to their resume for National Women's Equality Day on August 26th. They probably could have a higher goal, but 1,000 women doing this is their goal. And like they got a whole bunch, like there's t-shirts and everything. I might have to actually get the t-shirt.
1,000 seems low, right?
Right.
Like you should do the Million Mother Resume March or something, like,
A Million Mother Resume March.
Well, not really a march, right? Like just a Million Mother Resume change or something.
The virtual. Yeah.
The virtual. I'm all for it. Like I was raised by a single mom and she worked her butt off. And I think, people, I mean, she was like trying to start her business and run the show when she tried to hide the fact that she was a mother, even though she had to work twice as hard because she was raising kids and trying to start a business and do everything all at once. So I'm all for it. I think it's a great thing. I do think, like, doesn't this come in like competition with there's a group of people trying to get the word mother eliminated from schools because some kids don't have a mother.
Yeah.
So we can't say my mom. You have to say like Peggy. Like we're teaching our kids to call, which I think is funny because my wife actually calls her mom Barb, but
wait, would you allow any of your kids to call you Tim?
I don't know if allowing, like Cameron, who's the producer of our show, shout out to Cam, my middle son, he calls my wife Kimmy all the time. Right. So it's like one of those.
Is she okay with that?
Yeah, because it's done in like a way that I think is kind and everything. So
yeah, I would freak out if one of my kids came up to me and said, "Hey, Jessica." Oh my gosh, I would have a heart attack.
Yeah. Bobby, more cereal over here.
Oh
be
my
like,
gosh.
what?
Oh my gosh.
I am your father.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
But I never thought about it. My kids are older now, so it wouldn't faze me at all. They've called me everything at this point. But
what is motherhood on the resume? I guess it's in. So one of the things I agree with this point 100% that there is a lot of unpaid labor that's involved with being a mother, and there's like emotional labor. There's all these things that mothers do that maybe aren't always recognized. But I don't know. One of the things I was curious your take on is that like it also is like limiting. What about like the dads? Because if I'm being really honest, there's a lot of stuff that the dad in my household does because we have like an understanding of one person's job is more demanding than the other, and he has more flexibility because he works for the federal government, and so like. I'm not outside playing with the kids. He's the one who's outside playing with the kids. He wakes up every morning and makes them breakfast, and I'm not doing that kind of stuff. I will say he also does their laundry and folds it. Doesn't always put the girls' clothes with the girls' clothes and my son's clothes. Like sometimes it gets some mix-ups with like, the things. But like, I would hate for us
I think my wife would call that you've trained Bobby really well.
And I should actually take credit for that on my resume. Not only am I a mother, but I have trained
husband trainer.
I'm a husband trainer.
We do this though. Every time someone comes up with a good idea, we both agree putting motherhood on your resume, great idea. Let's do it. Get a million mothers out there to put it on. But then we automatically jump to what about the dads? What about, whatever. And I think so then we just jump into parenthood, right? Like if you're a parent or you're a father or whatever, should you put that out there? If you're a husband, if you're a wife, like whatever you want to put, like someone's going to judge you regardless of what you want to do. And there's going to be people who support you for what you want to do. I think if you feel like, you know what, this is ideal, ultimately, like Jay, like isn't our resume or our profile on LinkedIn is just our brand, right? So if you connect with, hey, I'm a mother, I'm a father, it's part of my brand, it's who I am, and I want people to know that, then man, go do it, put it out there, And if someone's going to judge you for it, you don't want to work for that company or that person anyways,
Yeah, that's true. Something you said though about your own mother really resonates with me, which is that it's what's fascinating also is that like there's a shifting dynamic of hiding the fact that you're a mother or whatever versus like wearing it proudly with a badge. Like I remember I interviewed a gal years ago who I don't know how it came up, but like she told me maybe after the interview, she told me that she took off her wedding ring for the interview and didn't want to like come into the interview appearing as if she's like this younger, woman who has been recently married and maybe is going to be soon of childbearing age. And I think she was comfortable with me afterwards that she was telling me these things. And I remember being so shocked that was kind of, in her head before she came in for the interview. Whereas I'm sure even like decades ago, I can't even imagine like the stigma and thoughts versus now, like things have shifted. It's crazy.
Well, they have it, right? There's going to be a number of people out there that are screaming and listening to this going, no, never put that out there. There's going to be people that are going to have bias against you because of it. It would be the same thing if we had people, could you imagine like seeing someone's profile that says I'm a grandmother or grandfather? We know the ageism bias was going to come out at that point, right? So they would never put that out there. And I think there's definitely like startup companies, finance, like banking companies that would see mother or father and go, that's a weakness, right? We don't want somebody that's going to have other outside interests than what we're, like Wall Street kind of level type jobs or whatever that might be. So, I mean, I think you have to be pretty comfortable in your career and who you are to do something like that.
Yeah. Have you noticed? So I do think that personally, after becoming a mother, like it has made me, of course, a better person. I'm more fulfilled and all those things. But I actually do think as a leader, it's made me a different and better leader where I have much more empathy, much more patience. I have more understanding of different styles, different personalities. It's not just all my way, the highway. And so being a mother is probably something I definitely would. I don't know that I would call it out on my resume, but I know I'm a different and better leader because of it.
It's funny, right? When you said that, when you said that, because I've known you before you were a mom, before you were married too, right? And then also after being a mom. And the one thing that popped in my head was you're still the same person, same personality, but you are more empathetic. Like the pre-mom JLee would kill some people and not think twice.
That is why I am Chloe the assassin in the 9 Faces of HR. Not really her, but maybe was her at some point in time.
Exactly.
But like the difference that it like in a person for like what happens after you become a parent, I think, there's some validity to it. But I know some people who can't handle their stuff. So there's also that. You got a whole mixed bag. But 1,000 people getting this on their resume, MOTR, Motherhood on the Resume. It's a movement. It's got to be more than 1,000 people for it to get to a movement, though.
We'll put the link in the show notes so people can read about it and check out their. I'm sure they have a site and they said they had T-shirts, right? The whole thing.
They got all the swag. The swag. What I do like about this movement, though, is this idea of, especially if you've had a break from work, how to describe and articulate like what that break was about, as opposed to just it being a complete gap on the resume. Because like if it's a gap on the resume, then people wonder like, well, what was it? Why? You don't want people making assumptions about it. But speaking of gaps on resumes, I saw this post on LinkedIn the other day and I thought it was interesting. There's a lot of comments and a lot of shares on it. And I thought, we've got to dissect this. So here's what this person posted. So HR person works for a big brand. and maybe it was kind of a rant that this person was putting out there on
Mhm.
the LinkedIn, but I'm gonna read it to you, and like we got to talk about this. So she says a friend of hers was laid off in June, like literally millions of others. She's being considered for a job now, and they asked her why a gap since June and what she was doing to occupy her time. And she, the poster, was a little bit concerned and frustrated. Lots of question marks about like, are you serious? And that, her question was, have you been living under a rock and maybe have zero emotional intelligence? By asking this question as an interviewer of someone. And I thought it was interesting. So like
Yeah.
thousands of likes, hundreds
Super.
of comments.
Yes. I mean, like literally like 6,200 plus likes, over 500 comments. That's a lot for a LinkedIn post
That's a lot.
for just, I mean, literally, I mean, and no like disrespect to this person. They're just an HR business partner for a big brand with not a giant following, right? They just kind of put this out there and it just hit a sore spot for a lot of people.
Yeah. So this is like a real thing, right? Like there's pre-pandemic, gaps on resumes. I think it's an interesting discussion point if you were, let's say, out for maternity leave, paternity leave, or whatever it might have been, or you had an illness, there's plenty of reasons you decide to take a break, sabbatical, whatever it is. In the past year, yes, there have been people who have been out of work for reasons that are not necessarily within their realm of control. And I guess I'm just surprised that she went to the place of like, we shouldn't ask about it.
Get ready to turn up the volume on your HR game. I'm Jay Arnold, former musician turned HR leader and host of Backstage Pass, the HR Rockstar. Each episode pulls back the curtain on key HR topics, from leadership lessons and bold career pivots to the latest in HR tech and talent strategies, featuring the rock stars within their industries. If you're ready to shake up the status quo and amplify your impact, this is your all-access pass. You can catch the show on the Work-Defying Podcast Network and wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe now and let's rock the future of work together.
Well, so one thing that I thought about as we were talking about this is she's an HR person, not a talent acquisition person.
Mm.
So the HR person in her might think, like she had said, like, well, you've been living under a rock and have zero emotional intelligence. And she's obviously ranting a little bit on this, to be like, I have a hiring manager actually ask this. The talent acquisition pro in me goes, no, 1000% of the time you would ask. Because just because there's a pandemic or just because there's a recession or just because of whatever, that you have this gap on your resume, I want to know, what if the gap on the resume was, hey, by the way, there's a pandemic and also I was grabbing someone's ass, like, and I got fired. Like, I mean, come on, like that's the reality of the world we live in, is there's bad stuff that happens and we want to make sure that we're having these, these conversations. Now, again, if the candidate is worth their weight in like just anything, if they're any good at all, they'll go, it was a pandemic. My company had layoffs, you understand, or I have an immune, compromised system and I had to leave the work because of COVID and isolate myself, whatever. And my company didn't have remote work. I mean, there's a million reasons that people would go, cool, dude, got it. Easy, move,
Yeah.
next question.
Yeah.
But if they go, well, my employer and I thought it was best that we both not, it's one of those things where you're going, so you got fired, let's talk
So
about
you
that.
mutually decided it wasn't a good arrangement. But, so it's like, I like in the past when I've interviewed folks who either had gaps in resume because of motherhood or otherwise, like one of the things I've always wanted to know was like, well, like, what did you do at the time? Like, tell me a little bit about like,
Yeah,
what was happening during that time frame. And I've had
sure.
honest answers where people have said, I literally was caretaker for, X person in my family, and it was all consuming. But there were things that I learned in that process, how to navigate through gray, how to navigate through, healthcare systems. And like, they were able to talk about like, what it was. I've had people who've also said, like, I'm thinking about an example recently where someone was furloughed and they were telling me they were furloughed. Like they spent a ton of time having to figure out, the unemployment system, but then they used it as a time to be productive. They picked up another language and they didn't get proficient at learning Italian, but they tried and they were taking, advantage of resources that were out there to try to learn something new. And I guess that's for me, like the miss on like this person's post is like, yeah, you want to have empathy, but like you also want to see like what are people made of during a time like that, right? And then understand.
It seems a little naive to the reality of the world, right? Like it just like a little too kind of rose-colored glasses around the world, and like everybody is, in dire straits and having a bad time because of the pandemic. It's not been like that for everybody. So like, let's calm down and like actually ask real questions and behave like we're professionals around that. Question for you. So let's say interviewing somebody, they have a pandemic gap. We should coin that. We should write a book called The Pandemic Gap.
Yeah.
And they have a pandemic gap, and they go like, hey, well, Tim, what did you do? And I go, oh gosh, Jessica, I can't wait to tell you. In fact, let me send you the spreadsheet. And what you get sent is a spreadsheet of all like the Netflix streaming shows they watched in every episode. They broke it down. By the way, I put in 1,900 hours. And you're just kind of like, I don't know if I'd be scared, impressed, or like going, look, dude, I'm not hiring you. You got a problem.
Well, I would be impressed with the thorough nature of their logging. I would ask about like, what did you learn from those 1,900 hours? Like, how would you like to inform Netflix and these other streaming platforms? And like, you could draw the heck out of that and like really psychoanalyze that person.
Did you start a blog? Like you would think somebody that like went to that, like the reality is what we know is that we've all increased our streaming content that we've watched during the pandemic.
Oh my gosh. But so here's a question for you. So like, let's put pandemic aside and just talk about like resume gaps in general. Like what's the longest gap where like at that point it's like, okay, I'm going to ask you what's going on. But like if you're talking to like even a job seeker about, how to frame up their experience or history, like when it's a multi-year gap, like at that point, like what's the longest where it's like, okay, we got something.
So I will give an executive, and that's like VP and above, 12 months. And once it gets past 12 months, I start to go, wait a minute, like there's a problem here. Now, again, part of it is it's all in context of that. If they come back and say, you know what, I'm specifically, I worked all these jobs and they showed good tenure at jobs and good performance and blah, blah, blah. And then they made this conscious decision to say, I only want a VP job in Lansing, Michigan, and technology or whatever, right? And there's so few of those jobs, but they're like, by the way, my wife is a surgeon. I don't really have to work. Like, and so I'm waiting for the right opportunity, blah, blah, blah. So you're like, okay, like you got me into the story now. Maybe I can believe this, but still you better have a 1 handicap in your golf game if you're off for a year and, you're an executive or whatever. As you start to go down the chain in terms of pay and you get in, so like if somebody's making, let's say between $15 and $20 an hour, if you're out of work for 90 days, there's a problem. Unless it's pandemic like related, but in like right now today, if you came and said, oh, or if you were like actually were brave enough to say, oh, you know what, my company laid me off during the pandemic. I was getting unemployment and stimulus, and it's the first time I had a chance to spend time with my kids. And quite frankly, I was making 90% of what I would or whatever. I'd be like, cool, take the opportunity, be a better dad, whatever. But if you're just like, yeah, I just can't find a job, like you're lying to either yourself or me or somebody. Like, I don't know what that is.
You know what you're bringing up that's like a thought for me is like, people are scared when you're a job seeker and you're interviewing to like tell the truth. So that's one thing. They're also not good at kind of positioning how to like describe a negative situation, a job gone wrong, a break, or things of that sort. And part of it is because there's like this power dynamic when you're in the interviewer seat. You're the hiring manager or an interviewer or a recruiter. And I think that like, I've actually never thought about this till like us talking right now. Like in all the time I've spent like working with hiring managers, I don't know I've ever like thought to like talk to them or teach them about empathy, like as an interviewer.
Yeah.
Like, is that like a topic that's come up for you in the past in working with hiring managers?
It's not. Most of the interview training, in fact, every interview training thing that I've ever seen or been a part of has always been about like really getting the information out, right? But that should be a technique, because I think if you're really empathetic, you're probably going to open up a lot of stuff, that people are willing to then go, you know what, this person really seems like they care, whether it's real or fake or whatever. And they probably would actually get some really good stuff, from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I've thought about things like, how do you put someone at ease and make them feel welcome, but not necessarily like empathy literally as a specific tactic to engage a person, get more out of them, but just from like an employer brand perspective and otherwise, like I feel like there's a huge opportunity there for people to think about like, how do we come across in interviews? What's the tone that we're setting with people, and what's the role of empathy, especially like in the past year when it's been like rough and tough, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Empathy as a part of hiring manager training. I think I'm on to something.
You are, but I mean, you'd have to actually like frame, like, what did you get out of that? Like, I mean, is it you potentially might get more information, or potentially you might see the real person? Like, I think there is, like, I mean, I agree with you. I do think there's an opportunity there, because I think so many of our hiring managers are just, question, follow the process and get out of it and make a decision versus, truly understanding. I'll give you the best example of empathy from a hiring manager I've ever seen. So I was young in my career as a recruiter, and I found an engineer, and I'd screened the engineer, talked to the engineer a number of times. And we were doing work with General Motors. And at the time, General Motors had us come on site for in-person interviews with our candidate. And by the way, they don't do that anymore, but it's a brilliant move, because if you're a crappy recruiter with a crappy candidate, you immediately feel like the biggest turd in the world sitting there with a hiring manager. Like that, you immediately know. So anyways, I'm with a hiring manager that I had done a lot of work with. We had other people working there, had interviewed with this person a lot of time. He was a grandfather, so he's older, and he kind of had that grandfatherly kind of way about him. So young engineer, like 1 year out of school, comes in, and immediately he picks us up in the lobby. I see I walk in, the kid's already there. I say hi. I immediately see he has a speech impediment, like a severe stutter, but he only had it in person. Over the phone, he was fine. So he never told me. So I'm immediately, I start to like have like that sweat, like, holy shit, we're going to sit in this interview and this kid's going to be stuttering. And God bless that man at GM. Like we went an hour and a half, and he asked his questions. He waited. He was empathetic. He was, he was professional. And we went through the entire thing. And afterwards, like the kid, said goodbye to the kid, blah, blah, blah. Kid didn't get hired, but it wasn't because of his stutter. He didn't have enough experience. But I'm like, how did you do that? And he's just like, I just in my mind imagine how difficult it was for him.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow, like that's just a natural empathetic person, right? Like in my mind, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to last 5 minutes. And he's going to go, okay, thanks. We don't need anything else.
That is a masterclass in empathy, and that man should put grandfather on his resume, like with all those skills that he's learned. But it makes me think about like back to this conversation of like, are you better as a mother and the things that you bring to the table as a mother? Like even as a recruiter, I think back to like maybe me feeling overly confident and like in a seat of power, interviewing, I don't know how many people over the years versus now. Like I used to think like, oh, this person can't get their stuff together. They're so nervous. They're a sweaty mess, like coming in here and like I can see the sweat stains. And versus now, I think I would have a lot more empathy around like, man, this is not easy to be in the seat of an interview. Like being a mother.
Because you're a mom, you're like my kid might be this person sitting in front of somebody one day, right? Or being a father, the same thing. You start to view the world a little bit differently from that. Going, gosh, if my kid showed up and he's a sweaty mess, like
oh my gosh. Well, you know what? Already, like when she gets nervous, her palms get really sweaty, or it's just anxious. And so like we could be watching something on TV and it's kind of like she's like her heart is racing, and then I'll like touch her hand. She says, my hands are sweaty. And I'm like, oh no, what are we gonna do when it comes to like job fair time? You're gonna be like shaking hands with people and they're gonna be like, oh, that kid's not sweaty.
Hey, by the way, I know because my older son Keaton, he'd probably die if he heard this. Anyway, he's a sweater, right? And he's an athletic kid, so we've always known like he sweats a lot, and so again, he's he's a professional and he figured it out, and they have all whatever. But like, so my wife actually started looking up like how we could help them, because it's just parents do this crap, right? You look up weird shit that you can help.
You want to fix everything.
You want to fix everything, and she found out that you can do Botox in your armpits.
Yes.
But I'm great, but where does that come out? Like, then where, like, all of a sudden you start sweating out your hands, like your ears, like it has to go somewhere, right? Like, you just don't stop sweating.
Yeah.
And so, so I'm wondering, like, when you said that with Una, like, can you just like, oh, we're going to Botox her hands. So now she has dry hands with no wrinkles. And
well, we'll either Botox the hands, or I'm going to teach her to like put a little, I don't know, a little towel hidden somewhere, like wipe that hand off before you shake a hand, like something subtle. And if worse comes to worse, yes, we're going to Botox the hands. And then I will go with her to those appointments so that she'll get her hands Botoxed. I'll get my forehead Botoxed, and we will just all
family
come out
Botox.
Perfect. Family Botox session. I love it. Speaking of your children, I want to give a shout out to Cam Sackett, who had his first published piece on BuzzFeed. And like, that is some legit business. I saw him post about like, he's not necessarily always a writer because he's more on the social media side of things, but his own byline with a BuzzFeed article. Of course, him as a Swiftie, ranking her his 45 favorite songs. I mean, I was impressed. Like, wow, you can like rank her 45
video she's had in her career.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
And by the way, he knows. I mean, he knows every single one, which is crazy. It was funny because I started going through the list, and I knew maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12. Because most of her stuff is like number one, like pop hits, right? So you can't kind of get away from it. And I was just like, I was giving him feedback behind the scenes, like, yeah, there's no way that one was number 10. That should be at least 5 or 6. But
I need to go see how many comments on the article, how many likes. But Cameron Sackett, I stan you. You Swiftie, getting your first BuzzFeed article with your own byline. I mean, that is just, that's got to be a proud dad.
If you're going to do content, do something one, right? Rule number 1, do something and then do it in your voice that you're comfortable in. The BuzzFeed, credit them, they allowed him to do something he knew in his voice, and it came across as a great piece. I think the traffic on it's been really, really high. And that's the one nice thing. Like, I know, I think between his junior and senior year in college, I had him write on my blog as a career confessions of Gen Z. And so he started to work on like finding his voice, and he's got a good natural voice. I think he could do content easily for a lot of companies. So BuzzFeed's lucky to have him.
Love it. Love it. Well, we're lucky to have him as a producer. What a lovely slate of topics. Just so warm and fuzzy as we talk about motherhood, fatherhood, children and their sweaty armpits and hands. I mean, it's just really awesome. That's what we're here for. Well, Kristen will be back shortly, so I miss having the three of us, and I got a good topic for one of our next episodes.
Yes.
You guys, just wait, Kristen.
Lists.
We're gonna save.
We're gonna talk lists next time.
Let's talk about a very HR famous topic, lists. And my husband, Bobby J, has opinions about these HR lists, by the way. Like,
you might have to bring him in like a quick spot. He can run into the Beck's bedroom and take a quick comment.
Maybe. And you guys will laugh. I'm going to share his take on the list because he's got a pretty hilarious take on these lists.
Nice.
So that'll be for next time. That's all for today, folks. I'm Jessica Lee. He's Tim Sackett. Kristen will be back next time, but this is HR Famous.